Good evening, everyone. You're welcome back to class. We are going to have a very good time to look at all the summary of everything that we have done from topic 1 to 7. It's going to be an interesting time together, looking at all the various aspects that has been covered in this lesson. I will expect you to look at this one especially and come up with questions that I can answer through our discussion. You can send me email as we continue to interact on or before your examination. So I'd like to welcome you to class again. We have gone through a lot of classes, and today I will take you through them one after the other. I'll be sharing my screen immediately and take you through the very first lesson that we did when we started this facilitation. The first thing that we looked at, we're looking at the status of fisheries in Nigeria. And so we look at the entire status. And in that, we look at the fisheries activity, we look at aquaculture and the potential of aquaculture to bridge the gap. Okay, and I hope you have gone through all of this subject matter. I'll be expecting your questions. I would have truly want to see where you come up with your questions and we can interact together. But unfortunately, I guess that many of you were not able to make it. Many of them have actually looked at all of these videos, but unfortunately I have not gotten questions from you. So we look at the state of fisheries, how that, 3% of the world fisheries have been overfished. I mean, they have been overexploited. And in looking at that, we're able to look at major constraint of fishery resources, look at the management of that fishery resources. Remember that we also talked about, the capture fisheries and the aquaculture, how that aquaculture is fast growing. However, we still depend on the capture fisheries, which covered the artisanal and the industrial fisheries. We also explained to you that we have two major pond systems, the simple one and the highly intensive systems that are currently being practiced. But unfortunately, the state of the nation have not allowed most people to go into, the intensive system of aquaculture. So we also told you that, fishery resource Nigeria is quite big. We have close to about 251, 1,100 kilometer continental shelf that house close to about 1,199 culturable fish species, 35 families. And the shellfish is just 9 culturable families that we have in our continental shelf. I have not received any of your posts in this activity. It's not too late to make your own voice to be heard. Why has Nigeria capture fishery not attained? So that we're still looking for aquaculture to bridge the demand gap, meaning that every day, every family, 200 million above, we have in Nigeria currently can have fish on their table. It's yet to be realized. Why has it been so? Because we have not taken advantage of the fishery resources that we have here. They are the most important. We have period distribution, we have important species, and they are resources where they can be found. Also, looking at the major constraint that we talked about, they are just about about 7 of them. If they can be taken care of, we can be sure that we are able to satisfy the fish demand for this nation. Poaching is a very important problem that we are trying to combat against. Recently, we heard that there's a lot of theft in our continental shelf, but that's not the only problem that we have. The crude way of capturing of this fish is still being done in most fishing grounds, and of course, low per capita income. So please go through this major constraint and know it for yourself. You may be the one that will help to overcome this constraint. But aquaculture is actually doing very good. It's coming up so that all of this limitation can be a thing of the past. Okay, and these are the management procedure that we shared with you. There are 6 of them: closed season, provision of trawlers, restriction of certain area that is not allowed to be fished. And of course, we also told you about, the vessel size have to be limited. The maximum core length mesh size has to be also be established and followed. Then told you that you want to resolve, if you want to implement, resolving those major constraints, what do we do? So please offer your mind continuously in our chat group. It's still open, even though we are just giving a summary today. It's still open. You can go ahead and make your contribution. Okay, so very importantly, these are the things that we want you to know precisely in the first class. Okay, coming to the second class, we want you to, come to, when we told you about the resources that we have, we move to a position where we now have, sorry, just 1 minute. Yes, topic 2. In topic 2, we were discussing with you on the morphology of fish. Okay, we're looking at the morphology and the basic structure of fish. And here we looked at how you can identify fish, why are you identifying the fish and how to identify them, the mouth orientation, the finnage, the coloration, are the main way you can really use to identify them. However, we do fish identification because we want to know which fish can you consume, which one you can't consume. We also say that, yes, there are things that, we use fish. Why we identify fish? Because we want to use some of them for research purposes, for training purposes, and for production purposes. These things you should be on your fingertips, especially as we prepare for exam. You should know all of this. 2, for identifying external and internal features. We told you about the numeric characteristics and biometric characteristics, countable features, and uncountable features. So we have to know the external and the internal. And the basic rule that you can't allow yourself to forget is that all these metric characteristics are discrete, are whole numbers always, whole numbers always. Please take a note of that and pay attention to it. And in measuring the biometric characteristics, the fin, the distance between one fin or the other, the number of fin, the depth of the fish, the percentage of the sizes, these are the various things that we use to differentiate one species of fish to another based on their features, internal and external. So this is an activity that you should attempt, because you can never tell. It can be one of the questions in your examination. Okay, so we also look at the internal feature, just like we look at the external. We went into look at the field gill rakers, okay, being one of the internal features that we consider. The number of the comb-like structure that we have, the number and the shape, differentiate one sheep fish to another. Okay, so this gill raker is a major internal feature that differentiates one fish from another, shape and the number. I showed you the diagram of a bony fish, the skin. We look at these details subsequently. We looked at the details, the fin, the mouth, the teeth, the scale, the body shape, and the color of the fish. This is the external feature of the fish piece. This is one thing that you should know, because questions will be coming from them. We are abreast with all, the total length, the standard length, the head length, all of that, the length of the entire fish, the depth of the fish also, where are they located? That's the things you must pay attention to. Then we looked at the different types of dorsal fin that we have. We also look at that. Go through all of these things. I won't waste time on them because we've gone through them again, the different shape of caudal fin that we have. The round, the truncated, the tunnel, the fork, the S shape, all of this, they are the different shape that distinguish one fish from another. Remember, we're looking at the morphological features of the fish. We also look at the scale as well, not just the fin, as we said, not just the caudal fin, but we're also looking at the scale, the different shapes of the fish. These are still the numerous ways we can distinguish one fish from another. We also look at the position of the mouth. It can either be inferior, the terminal, the superior, and the protrusible mouth. It's a different position the mouth are. We have talked about this before. Let's take a look at this before. The shape of the teeth are also very important. Okay. And also we look at the classification of the species also from the phylum to the species, going through the subphylum, the class, the suborder, and what have you, as stated in the slide you're watching. So we're also classifying the fish according to the habitat and according to the pattern of migration. You know, we have the marine, the brackish, and the water. These are just the division according to this the content of the salt in that water body. And this is just the pattern of the migration, whether they migrate from brackish to freshwater or vice versa, or simultaneously. And we have different species that, you know, have this different migration pattern. This is another class question that we asked you. Please go through them. We are saying classify the fish according to their habitat and pattern of migration. You can do a further study on that. See different fishes. There are more than what we have stated, but just go ahead and do your own investigation and report back to us next on our discussion forum. Then we'll talk on two things: the commercial fish fin and the commercial shellfish. These are the species that we have in our continental water body. Take a closer look at all of them, you know, and you will be glad you do that. The third thing that we showed you, which is the let's come out of this. Let's come out of this. Okay. Yes. So the next thing we are looking at is the third class. Okay, just 1 minute, I'll be with you. Yes, we look at the water quality, because it's good that, you know, we examine this closely, because having looked at the state of the fisheries, having looked at the morphology of the fish, we came to look at the water where these fishes live, have their living. And in looking at that, we were able to tell you many learning outcomes that we want you to learn. And I hope you have learned them, you know, from the morphology, from the state of the fishery to the morphology, now to the water where the fish dwell, which is very critical. You know, it's very, very critical, because the water quality determines the productivity of the fish itself. So very important water quality. There are many water quality parameters that we looked at, you know, how that we need to choose the right source of water for our fish, how that you must be able to manage your phytoplankton, the bloom that happen as a result of intensity of the fish, of production process. They also told you that there are many ways in which you can improve on that water quality. Okay, so this is the environment, the different fishes, you know, where the environment where fish perform all its bodily function. It breathes, it grows, you know, excrete there, maintain a salt water balance. These are the things that you should know, that there are different states in which water exists. So, and they can make transition depending on the temperature. Then we told you that the temperature fish they take on the temperature of the environment, and temperature play a major role, you know, in the water balance and the fish adaptability, you know, in that water body. Okay, we told you that there's a major characteristic that water has. Water, density, quality that, that make it unique, to itself. Then we told you about the osmosis that take place in the water balance in fish. That is very important. The marine fishes, and the freshwater, each of them respond to the salts in different ways. And of course, water quality is critical to aquaculture. Tell us more about it. Then we showed you the different sorts of water, and because it's a limiting factor, because water is equal to fish, no water, no fish. And water source determine the negative chemical and environmental factor. So these are the different various sources of water that we have. The physical characteristics of water is very important. The taste, the temperature, the color, temperature of the water affects the activity, the behavior, all things. Everything about the fish is affected by the water and the water parameters. Well, one of the most critical water parameters that we cannot toy with is the dissolved oxygen level. Of course, this is dependent on many other factors, especially the temperature that can alter, the dissolved oxygen level because of photosynthesis processes. Now, this is what we told you about one of our the problem that water, has if you go in the intensity, intensive production of fish. We can have suspended, solid as we see in these pictures. We can have phytoplankton. We can have turbidity issues. How to remedy it. We told you about that. Please pay attention to the details. I'm just going through all that we have taught you in times past. Then we told you about the characteristic of the chemical characteristics. What you saw here are the physical characteristics: the suspended solid, the turbidity, and the phytoplankton. These are physical characteristics. But we now came to chemical characteristics: the photosynthesis, the dissolved oxygen, parameters, and how that the fishes has different range at which they tolerate dissolved oxygen in the of the fish. We have different level, of dissolved oxygen. All those terminology must master them. Then we also told you that the chemical characteristics also include the ammonia that occur in aquacultural system. They can be ionized, they may be unionized. Then, of course, the carbon dioxide. Then the pH of the water. Different fish, depending on what the pH is. Once the fish, when they are exposed to a particular level of pH, it can be very dangerous. But we told you that the ideal pH that is meant for different fishes, but generally between pH 7 and 8.5 is the most ideal. Anything below and above it, a danger zone for the fish. Also, we told you about water hardness as one of the chemical characteristics of the water. Okay, now we told you also that this term is very important. The eutrophication of the water body, meaning that the aging process that end up with the dead of the pond. You can just imagine the pond can be dead because it cannot provide useful life for the fish. So pay attention to all of that as well. Okay, and of course, we have different level of the health of the aquatic water body. We have the oligotrophic, mesotrophic, eutrophic, and the super hyper eutrophic, severely degraded. Okay, so the important thing we want to learn here is we must not allow our pond, the water body, the ecosystem to be degraded. So as soon as we see all of the signs that we have told you in the details, we just begin to remedy it. And there are ways we can remedy it. We can manage our phytoplankton this way, using the phosphorus, the copper sulfate, and all of that, thinning it physically as we're applying the dye. We can do that to manage the phytoplankton. Then we also look at beneficial practice which improve water quality, the watershed management, the management of phytoplankton inputs, and treating the water. So here we also give you another activity, management of phytoplankton. I told you this before. Please, you can have more idea from literature. Please apply to our discussion forum. Then the final thing I will be talking about is the management of the water sources. We can actually manage the water sources through this practice. Please don't forget them. We can look at the best practice that is being used, proper siting and designing, selecting and limiting use of the chemicals. It can be algaecide, it can be fungicide. Any of these things that you apply find their way back to the water body, and they can pollute it, or we should control it or limit it. We should learn to use biological rather than the chemical and the physical method. So we should guide against it and just know what our limitations are, so that the underground water will not be polluted as to cause issue for our fish. So we came to the end of that particular subject matter, looking at the water quality. And in topic 4, we're actually looking to understand the fish nutrition, feed, and feeding. Okay, so that's what we wanted to understand. And with that, we were taught you. So we're looking at the feed and fish, the feeding regime that you need to know about of the fish. So, and here we said our learning outcome will help you to be able to manage your nutrition so that you can get the right quality of fish, so that you will not shortchange yourself, because fish actually represent the 70% of, not 70%, probably 25% of your the cost in aquacultural industry. So look at the component of a balanced diet as well. Here are the fish and the feeding. The fish, as you can see in that picture, reaching out for their feed in the water body. And so there's a need for a very good nutrition, and it's essential for economic production of healthy and high quality fish, which is our interest. These are the different feed that we showed you, and their composition of feed. If you want to compound the fish, we have the protein, the fat, the carbohydrate, and the mineral. They are just going to give energy so that the fish can carry out metabolic activity, growth, reproduction, and what have you. Then we looked at where the feed are being produced in those industries. We said that the manufacturer must be able to have a common goal that we must achieve. That is, their feed must be nutritious, easy to handle, affordable, high quality, economically acceptable in the production chain. Okay, then the activity, the energy, what are the common goals? We just told you that, so you can tell us more from your own perspective. The feed industry in Nigeria, we have the problem of feed because there's constant fluctuation in price and the seasonality of the feedstock as well. They are a major problem, and for that reason, there's a need for you to have alternative feed. Replacements that must be of high quality, must have environmental friendliness, must be cost effective and sustainable if we are going to supplement one feed for another because of the seasonality and fluctuation. Okay, and these are the anti-nutritional factors that we have. So please go through them. If you have any question, you can please reach out to me. So the different component of feed, I just told you in the beginning, different component of correct fish feeds. We have the fish meal and the character, the oil, the fish oil, the two major ones, the omega-3 fatty acid and the omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acid. Also, we have the uses of this fish oil. So very important that we know that. The next component is the vitamin. We have the moisture content. Also, this we should pay attention to. Then the importance of having the right nutritional requirement for fish. We told you that the nutritional requirements, balanced one, should be able to sustain life, the life of the fish, to enhance the body, tissue body building, so that the fish will not also be kwashiorkor. So the chemical synthesis of and the energy provision for the fish. So there's a need for us to balance, and formulate our fish so that we can attain energy to protein ratio. These are just the requirements in details. The protein, then we have two types of amino acid, the essential and the non-essential. And what differentiates them is that the non-essential can be synthesized by the animal, whereas the essential cannot be synthesized. That's why it's essential. And it must be supplied to fish feed. These are the different sources of protein for our fish feed. So we should know them and reach out for them. But I've told you that the fish meal is the most excellent source of an amino acid that we currently have, even though it is very expensive. Okay, then we have the mineral, which is the ashes. We have the macro and the micro and their various functions. Please know them, the difference between what is the macro and the micro. That is a very place we can ask questions from. So the inorganic elements are necessary for the diet of the normal body functions. So know all of this. The energy feed also different from protein. Okay, so we must know this as well. Then we come to the fatty acid. We looked at protein, we're looking at carbohydrate, which is then we're looking at the fat and fatty acid. So pay attention to this. Very important. They are a component of feed. Then we ask the question during the class, how will you ensure that the nutritional requirement of fish is achieved during feed formulation? How will you ensure that? Okay. Now look at different type of feed that we have, and we use the floating and the sinking feed, and the advantage and disadvantage was covered in the lesson. Then we'll took you through, the various grades of fish according to the size of the fish, and that we must just give the fish the feed that is just enough for the current mouth size of the fish. Then we look at the basic rules that govern the feeding rate, the frequency, and the timing. So please, this is a very, very critical aspect that you should know as a practitioner. If you are going to successfully raise your fish, you must know the feeding rates, you must know the frequency and the timing. All of this is depending on the oxygen level, the time of the day, the temperature, all of that play a major role affecting the feeding rate of the fish. So whether the fish will not accept the feed or not. So pay attention to this and read through it. I wish you are here. We'll have asked questions and clarify area where you don't understand, so I can throw more light to it. But if you have any question, my email address is still there. Phone number is still open. You can always reach me. So this is what you should know, when formulating diets, balanced diets that is required for the healthy growth of the fish. So we'll have to be abreast with all of this. Then we looked at what a complete diet is, what supplementary diet is. We looked at all of this. So pay attention to what's the component of a complete diet and what's a component of complementary diet. And these are the areas we covered when we were looking at the feed fish, and the component of healthy fish. So in topic 5, we're just looking straight, we went straight to the fish diseases, okay? Because we know that if the feed is not good, if we know that the water is not also very good, we are likely going to have fish diseases. So you must know how to manage it. And in managing it, we look at what fish diseases is, okay? And we said it's unhealthy fish body, a departure from what is normal. I will show you, like you see in this picture, these are the various diseases, that can happen to the fish, which is a function, of either the water or the feed that has been supplied before. It can also be the fish itself. If the fish is diseased from source, it can also be a major problem. First thing is to identify and show you how to actually, cure them. But the diseases, abnormal states of the fish. Now we look at what actually leads to that fish diseases. I mentioned that briefly to you. Please listen to this recorded version, so you will see that intensive form of fish farming has become one of the main reasons why we have a lot of diseases. Okay, why? Because the metabolic activity increased in the fish pond, and all of that, algal grade, bacteria, the level of organic waste also increased. All of this factor leads to healthy condition of the pond that can lead to fish diseases. And we told you that we have the infectious and non-infectious. We differentiate between them. We have the nutritional diseases, environmental disease, chemical and physiological diseases. They are non-infectious. However, the virus and the bacteria, parasite, and fungal are infectious. You must know the difference between both and know how to manage both. They're quite different. And we said these are the different percentage, of the various disease loss, based on the different, whether it's infectious or non-infectious, actually suffer loss based on these diseases that affect our fishes. And we told you that, the economic loss is humongous. And so we must know how to combat it and ensure that we don't suffer our fish to be diseased as to cause harvest delay. They are not able to convert their feed because of their condition. Okay. Now, we also said that you can think about the impact of infectious. It's quite enormous, but please, you can search the literature and find out as it is specific to a particular fish species, or even look at the system of operation, whether it is earthen pond, whether it is concrete tank, whether it's recirculatory. What is the impact of this infectious fish in a commercial fish farm? Then we look at the management of practice that is being used prior to 1980 and after 1980. So take a look at it, what the management practices are. Then we also look at the effective health management of the diseases. Then we also look at both the use of medicated feed, which is very important subject we have to pay attention to. Then we look at in detail the bacterial disease of the fish. Okay, we looked at that. Then we also look at the fish pathogen, how that we have the opportunistic and obligated pathogen. Opportunistic, they just take advantage of it, because not always present and may not even cause any problem. However, if there is an external body that is broken, it can amplify it because the obligates solely cause disease rather than a secondary problem. Okay. We can use medicated feed, to take care of all of this. These are the integrated pathogen management. So we have to know all of this, management procedure, the communication, chemical control, physical control, biological control, and the monitoring. All of these are integrated. If properly done, we can achieve maximum sustainable yield in our various ponds. These are medicated feed that we can use to take care of the parasites. We have two of them that is approved as antibiotics for the fish. We have the tetramycin and we have the romex. All of these have their advantage and disadvantage. Now, we also told you about the homemade medicated feed. How that you can get a powder, put it in water, put it in your feed, and feed the fish with it. So it will take care of parasites that may want to affect our fish. And we look at, like I said, the advantage of each of those tetramycin or romex. Okay, so these are the advantage I showed you. These are the disadvantage. Please go back to those videos, watch it properly. If you have any difficulty in understanding any concept, you can feel free to get. Please feel free to get to me. These are different ways of treating the disease, either the deep method, the flush method, the indefinite method, and the feed treatment method. Also pay attention to the activity too. All the activities are very important for you. Take advantage of it. Lab for it. Step for implementing proactive pond management. Oh, this is beautiful. Now, if you proactive means that way ahead of time, you know that there's possibility for infection, and you're able to, take practical steps, to ensure that your fishes will not just suffer. They are quite explicit, but prepare your pond properly, clean all form of items, grade your finger lips so they will not eat each other, grade your stock density, use high quality feed, and reduce the feeding rate. Now, all these proactive steps can help you manage your pond, perfectly, and you will not have any problem with disease. To manage the disease when, So after that, we proceed, to tell you about the post-harvest handling of the fish. Okay, post-harvest handling of the fish, and in this we were able to tell you the role of the women and also their ability, capability, and constraint that they have as processor and traders. Okay, and we show you that post-harvest handling is very important. Haven't nurtured the fish, we escape the diseases, manage our pond very well, and so we should be able to handle our fish properly, so that we can avoid spoilage and it will reach the consumer, very fresh. And I said women, as you can see, played a very important role, in fish handling and also processing. This is a pond that has just been harvested and is being taken to, it's being frozen from the very shore of the river, of the sea. So you must handle it very well. It's a labor-intensive work. However, we must be able to ensure that it reaches the consumer very fresh. Either, there are various ways we can transport this fish. But, if you want to do it very well, because the fishes are coming from ice, it has to be frozen. We'll tell you more of it. I think in the subsequent slide, we're going to show you the different ways in which it can be handled and kept fresh. Okay, and like I said, whether it is close market or remote market, there are different considerations. When you are going to transport your fish, we'll explain them to you. Please go through them one more time. Okay, and this is still true. The processing is still women that are predominant in the processing of the fish, so that you can take it to a private, or industrial use. Okay. Now, we also said there are many methods in which we use to process our fish. So pay attention to them: the drying, the salting, the smoking, the chilling, the freezing, the canning. Each of these ones have their different advantage and disadvantage. Please go through them. And of course, when we do that, we do it to fit into consumer taste, the costs, available processing material, the technical know-how. All of this method, depends on these 7 characteristics. Which method you use depends on these characteristics. Okay. Now, then we look at the fishing market also, the marketing of this fish. Having a process, or maybe it may not be process. This is the marketing chain, that it follows. Okay. Then, what actually is limiting women from their participation, really? Because since they are the major player in this particular handling and process of fish, so it's good to know them. It's good to know them. Then we look at price determination, both in primitive market system and free market system. What determines the price of the fish? Transport, production cost, demand and supply, competition, processing, and depending on what kind of fish, the variety of fish that is in question. Okay, and the price determination, it's very important for us to know that there's prices fluctuate based on availability, the quantity, the quality, the purchasing power of the customer, depending on the season as well. Okay, the problem and constraint of post-harvest, are quite straightforward. If you don't have access to resources, insufficient credit, transport, bad road, processing method, price policy, and insufficient incentive, all of this plays a major role in a problem and constraint to post-harvest activity. Okay, and of course, we told you that to overcome this constraint, we must ensure that these things are taken care of for the women folk and those who are involved in this industry. These are also continuation of the recommendation that can help solve the problem that we highlighted earlier. Okay, and we're comparing here, and the similarity between a well-developed market structure and what we have in Nigeria. Okay, so the similarity in that, as long as they help to promote the trade association, helping the farmers, securing delivery and marketing their products, and also giving them social services in case there's misfortune. So these are quite similar, but it's different in the sense that they operate it in a more developed economic system. So that's what we looked at when we're looking at post-harvest handling of our fishes. On a final note, on the 7th topic, we're looking at something very interesting in the animal world, wildlife. And in this wildlife, we're looking at various aspects of wildlife. We look at the controlling principle of wildlife management. We looked at the prescribed fire, very important subjects that we looked at. We looked at the environmental variables affecting fire directly or indirectly. And we also look at how there are collaborative efforts in wildlife conservation. Okay, so these are the things that we looked at: wildlife. How do we define wildlife? The science of managing wildlife and its habitat, including man, for the benefit of the entire biota. Okay, so we defined that subject matter, and we said there is a need for a control. If not, the population of the wild will be wiped out, and some of them will even go into extinction, as we have some of them. Of course, this picture, if some I see it, I just laugh. So I'm a conservative. I kill there to help them. Without me, they will be in bad shape. True, they will be in bad shape because they have to be conserved. But you don't have to kill them and wipe them away. Because you're a hunter, you have the power to do so. So, what is the objective of control principle of wildlife? We told you that so that there could be survival of the breeding stock of animals to prevent population from, rising to a point of determinant of conflict. They can actually, they can actually rise up and wipe away other species. So all of these things interplay. We told you all of that, and the guidelines are very simple. If you are going to be involved as a licensed hunter, so we told you that these guidelines are very important, and of course, they're being monitored to ensure that the right thing is done in the wild. Then we have refuge wildlife management. These are places they told you are protected area where animals could hide against hunting, predation, and disturbance. Okay, so this wild has been protected by law, and the hunters don't have access to it. Okay, then we have, if you want to preserve some of these things, we told you that they are captive breed, the artificial stock. Okay, artificial in the sense that they are brought, they can be introduced or reintroduced to the environment where they have lived before. Then we told you that the pests can also be controlled. You know, there are many things before you start, wiping away the pests or any of the creation that you find to be disturbing other creation, or it's not allowing the ecosystem to be in a balanced form. There are many questions you're going to ask. Please ensure that you know the questions. And if you are going to be a wildlife manager also, or trying to manage the wildlife, you have to know all of these questions. For example, we're asking a question, when was the damage done? What is the extent of the damage? What is the quantity? What is the, in monetary term, what is it really as compared to what we are going to also engage in eradicating? So these are things we have to know. These are the various habitats of the fish, not of the fish, but of the wild, the different wild, these different wild in the game. The habitat improvement is very important so that they can survive in the habitats where they live. Then we also told you of how to achieve a goal of habitat improvement. We can, either mechanical, manual method, are used to achieve this end. Then, of course, method of propagation, process of successful propagation, the method of releasing desirable species are also covered in this slide. So we also told you about the fire. We also always think that fire is destructive. No, we can also use fire intentionally to manage, the vegetation. We call that prescribed burning. They are quite, it's quite interesting if it's well done. It can help us stop the fire from being negative, becoming from negative to positive. Okay, because it's used to control encroachment of rangeland, wood. Also help to control parasites that could negatively affect the wildlife. So this is a picture of the prescribed fire I spoke about. I've said it in the previous class that we had. It's a man using fire, just to burn away whatever can affect those trees. It's controlled. Of course, then we looked at the environmental variable affecting, fire directly or indirectly. Soil, what does the water does it, vegetation does it, the animal does it. Then we look at the fire regime, also the underground, the ground fire, the surface fire, and the crown fire. Then we looked at, the adverse effect of unbridled fire on vegetation and the beneficial effect of prescribed burning on wild animal. We looked at all of that. Pay attention to them. If you have any question, please feel free to reach out to me. These are the questions that we asked. Then we told you about the domestication, of our wildlife. Put them in a controlled environment and make sure that you give them the right balanced diet as well. They're able to roam within a confined environment. Call it ranching, and they have been domesticated. Look at it. Why are we doing it? We told you that 4 major reasons: pets, source of food, beast of burden, and hunting partner. You see a lot of dog play a major role in that, hunting partners. Okay, and the choice of this species that we use for domestication is based on the ecological potential and the acceptability, of the meat by the society. We said we have 3 species, maybe more, that has been successfully domesticated in Nigeria. There's ranching and domestication. We said the condition for successful domestication, 6 of them, adequate information about them, how they're able to resist diseases, their production and growth rate, the studies of the meat, the carcass quality, and the grazing behavior. Okay, the type of husbandry is very important. We can do extensive and or or intensive, sometimes also semi-intensive, where you can fence them and let them to graze and return back to their controlled environments. Okay, and coming to close, let's look at the local community participating in wildlife. Local community also participates in wildlife, and once they are involved, they are major actors as well. They're able to take decisions that affect them or they affect their immediate environments to ensure you can participate remotely, you can also participate actively. Okay, but these are the function of the local community. They design, implement, and evaluate projects. They have stewardship of the resources and they monitor and evaluate the resource base as well. These are the example of different local community participating in wildlife. So please pay attention to them. We have local community, the developer, extension worker, industry, indigenous people, and also non-governmental organization. Okay, and these are the elements of a collaborative approach, the various elements here. And all of these elements don't have to be in place, but most of them, if they are in place, they can actually help to manage the wild and conserve all the resources in that ecosystem. This is an example of community involvement programs that we have across Africa. Okay. So this wildlife has to be protected. These are various bodies that help to protect the wild so that people will not just take laws into their hand and wipe away a particular species. They help to protect the wild. These are the various duties, the sheep pack range, and the duty of the rangers. Please pay attention to them. And if you have any question, please feel free to ask your question. The discussion forum is still on. I will leave it open for you to ask your question or post your own. I'll be there to comment. If you have any reason, to call me, please feel free to do so. I wish you all the best in your examination. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you. I hope that you'll be able to listen to all the videos, PowerPoint presentation, everything that has been taught in the class. If you have to reach me, I'll be available to answer all your questions by the grace of God. I wish you all the best as you listen to this revision. If you have any question, like I said over and over, feel free to reach out to me. I wish you the best. Thank you very much. Thank you.